The last entry into a series done by Harebrained Schemes, Shadowrun Hong Kong wraps up a trip to the Far East. In this one, we finally get more emphasis on the various gangs of the regions and also stumble across a few seedy corporations to boot. Subjectively, Shadowrun Dragonfall is my favorite story told from the Shadowrun games, but Shadowrun Hong Kong seems to offer up some fresh experience as well as to offer up interesting choices and different angles to take on most of the main storyline missions. Keeping with the tradition I've come to expect from Harebrained Schemes, the main campaign is extremely short, clocking in around 10 to 20 hours to complete. Since Harebrained is notorious for this, I also opt to do as much side content as I can possibly do to level up the character. Also, I recommend following a strict leveling path for character stats. If you want to do melee, streamline it. If you want to do magic, well, then you got to make it so. There's just a little bit of play where you can actually dabble sparingly into a second combat style, but it won't amount to much other than to give you a little bit of options in fights that might require a different approach, and almost it really isn't worth it. As far as the gameplay mechanics, they remain mostly the same with the combat in the form of turn-based, and most abilities running off some form of round-based cooldown after you trigger them. I think it's worth noting, you don't have to play the first or second in the series to stumble into this one, as the story is wholly original, and it isn't tied to an overarching plot. And while the main campaign is short, there are plenty of modules that you can download to fulfill longer playthroughs and really get a chance to bang out certain builds. But before we dive too far down this rabbit hole, remember to like and subscribe for more content. Let's go ahead and dive in. I remember distinctly why I enjoy Dragonfall so much. It really took the fantasy elements and blended them into something that was a really nice package. Hong Kong, for whatever reason, doesn't land the same. Not to say that there isn't some buried monster variety here, ranging from ghouls to overclocked killer programs. And you can't really point to the plot because essentially it's pretty solid. But the tone and feel lean way heavier to Cyberpunk. It also focuses heavily on the social hierarchy of the underground in Hong Kong, which really isn't a bad thing considering that the game is based on Shadowrunning, but is far and away from the Scooby-Doo mystery van vibe that we got in Dragonfall. As far as the companions go in this one, I seemed inclined to like them all. For example, there was a surprise ally that turned out to be quite fascinating in tone and character. I think it was just this whole plight and dilemma of this person's situation. It really tapped into the weird, uncanny valley of supernatural and just went with it. Also, this particular character had probably my favorite companion quest line. As far as the tile sets, having Far East inspiration for cyberpunk settings seems almost like a no-brainer. I think back to Blade Runner as the granddaddy of cyberpunk world, and yes, I know there is somebody before that with a book and all that fun stuff, but that oriental futuristic style that we saw in Blade Runner is just absolutely ingrained into my head going forward. Shadowrun Hong Kong does some sweet justice to that if you like that feel. For example, just traveling across back and forth through the cityscape to talk to the vendors, or even transpiring through the dirty slums and seeing the aesthetics for the rooftops and tents just spoke volumes to what the feel and atmosphere would be like here, and they really did a good job. And with that, sound comes next. When you sit there and you have the design of Hong Kong, it just seems like you should have oriental themed music and the melodies and the futuristic vibe to go along with that, but it just wasn't there, or it wasn't presented enough if it was there. And they really could have tapped into this a lot harder. But for what they have presented, I'm going to go ahead and give you a little bit of a short example. My final thoughts are pretty simple on this title. Shadowrun Hong Kong was a good game. It's not great, and there's nothing spellbinding. It offers some of the best toolset making and current mod support for Shadowrun on the PC, so you do have that. And while the campaign leaves a lot to be desired, it was also a highly anticipated trip through the Far East in this world setting. Unfortunately, it didn't nail everything I wanted out of it, but it offers up some competent gameplay, and it's definitely worth a trip if you can catch this title on sale. Well, that's a wrap for my Shadowrun Hong Kong review. I'll go ahead and catch you on the next one. See you later.